for those who do not remember me from this morning, I'm Maya Pope Chappelle. I'm a news editor at LinkedIn. I work on our editorial team. I'm actually based in San Francisco, but I work a lot with influencers in this space, so people like the U.S. Secretary of Education, John B. King, as well as the edX CEO, Anand Agarwal. In addition to working with influencers, I also work a lot with universities, so university leaders, faculty members, as well as students, in getting them to publish. What I'm going to focus on this afternoon, which is, look at this view, amazing. I'm going to talk about how university leaders, faculty members, and also staff can really use LinkedIn publishing to share their expertise as well as their insights and perspectives. So I'm going to share with you some best practices, give you some insider tips on what editors like myself look for when we're looking to promote content more widely on the platform. I'm only going to be in front of you maybe 20 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So would definitely love to answer any and all questions that you guys have. But to get started, I want to talk about our audience, which is really one of the things that really makes publishing on LinkedIn a must-do. We have more than 450 million members worldwide. In the U.S., there's about 130 million. So the large audience really makes LinkedIn an ideal platform for you to publish or even cross-post from, say, your university blog or even personal blogs for faculty members. Among the members on LinkedIn, you have alumni, you have students, you have faculty members themselves, as well as industry leaders. So it's a really great way to expand the footprint of the individual themselves and also the university. It's a really great place to share your expertise. Is my mic okay? Because I'm going in and out. Perfect. Okay. To really share your expertise, not only with a large audience, but also really key audiences and a variety of industries. Just to give you an idea of kind of the following for our different channels, our education channel in particular has more than 6 million followers. Our tech channel, I think it's, 17.5 million. And our leadership channel has more than 21.5 million followers. So again, not only very large audiences, but also the right audience. It's also a great place to gain more exposure for your thoughts and ideas, not only on LinkedIn, but also off platform as well. Another thing that really sets LinkedIn publishing apart is the level of engagement that we see on the platform. We get a lot of people who comment, who share, who like. So again, it's really not only on platform, but also off. And ultimately a really great way to build influence, again, as individuals and as the university. So just to kind of bring this to life, I wanted to include some quotes from some of the academics who I work with who publish. Jeffrey Garrett, he is the dean at Wharton. He has said, "I enjoy the challenge of thinking and writing on big topics in succinct ways without jargon." University of Pennsylvania professor Mary Beth Gassman, she says, "I probably get more engagement with readers than I have for any other outlets, even the New York Times." And that is actually New York Times is plural, so she's implying that not just the New York Times, but other large publications. Nancy Gray, she's the president at Holland University, which is a private institution in Virginia. She says, "We know current and prospective students, alumni, parents, faculty, and staff make use of LinkedIn, which is one reason I established a LinkedIn presence and share my views on education and careers." And finally, Bali Air, who's a professor at Babson, he says, "When writing about pedagogy, I have found the LinkedIn platform to be the very best. My messages have squarely reached my target audience." So those two, again, talking about the audience that you can reach and really using LinkedIn to share that influence. So I want to talk about what's really going to help make your post stand out. I would say generally we prefer topics, of course, that touch on the professional sphere and topics that would appeal to professionals no matter what industry, really. We have everything, again, from education to business to supply chain management. So we have a variety of fields that our various members come from. And generally, I would say, not just leadership or careers, but we're really looking for for, repurposing some research that you might be working on, teaching methods, maybe new things that you're trying out at your university. That type of content does well too. In terms of what's really going to make us pick up your post and not only have it shared with your network, but also a much wider audience, these are the types of topics that we want. So first, timely. So using the news as a conversation starter or as fodder for a post, that really helps it to stand out. The key is to really connect it back to your expertise. Breaking views is similar to that, but it's something that you can turn around really quickly, and it's kind of your view or like an op-ed on kind of a event of the day or big news item of the day. Again, unique insights and perspectives. LinkedIn publishing is all about really unlocking the knowledge that professionals have in their brains and really sharing it with the world. So anytime you can write a post that really offers that, that's something that we would take and potentially promote very widely. And finally, trends. Any industry-specific trends that you might be seeing or anything that you might be observing, not only in higher ed, but also other industries, that stuff does really well too. So just to show you some examples of some of the posts that have been written on LinkedIn, I just want to go through these. Going back to the dean at Wharton, Jeffrey Garrett. Oh, and just a caveat, normally for posts you won't be able to see the number of page views, but I've included it here just so you can kind of see the reach of some of these posts. But this is Jeffrey Garrett. He's an influencer now, but he did not start off that way, so I just want to tell you kind of the brief story of how he became an influencer. So he was publishing consistently, just like any other author on LinkedIn. And what he was able to do is to not only write on very timely topics, but he was very consistent, and he was really able to kind of build his own audience without us. And we love to see that. So we were able to make him an influencer on LinkedIn. And I just checked, he has more than 192,000 followers on LinkedIn. This particular post, he wrote about Brexit and the impact that it would have on economies worldwide. As you can see, I don't know if you can see from the back, but it has more than 277,000 views, more than 700 comments, which is awesome and insane at the same time. And it got shared more than 800 times. So as you can see, this post did extremely well. He definitely wrote about it at a time when everyone was talking about Brexit. So it was something that we were able to pick up and really promote. This next example was written by Michael Sorrel. He is the president of Paul Quinn College in Dallas, and he wrote about the impact the Fisher v. University of Texas case would have on universities and also affirmative action. Again, this post did really well, more than 14,000 views, more than 900 shares, which is awesome because it's not only being shared on LinkedIn, but also off-platform as well. And I wanted to include this example because it's timely, and you'll also notice this video at the top. I can't play it, but it's a interview that he did when he came to our studio here in New York, and I sat down with him. So I not only do interviews with influencers, but I also talk to industry leaders, university leaders, experts in education. So this is an option if anyone is interested in that. This next example is from Bill Bolding. He is the dean at Duke's School of Business, and he wrote this shortly after North Carolina passed its bathroom law, which many believe discriminated against people based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. Oh, look at the celebration. Thank you. And so, again, another example, this is really an example of kind of a breaking view. He was able to turn this around really quickly. And as I mentioned earlier, we really want posts that are focused on the professional sphere. So we not only talked about kind of the bathroom law, but he really focused in on how companies and business leaders in particular were fighting back against this law in North Carolina. So this is a good example of breaking views. This next one is a good example of kind of a unique perspective. This is Kelly Blount. She's the dean at the Kellogg School of Management. She is one of the few females who is leading a top business school. So she relies on that experience and uses that to write this post about how women can really break through in male-dominated fields. And this generated, again, a lot of shares, more than 588 shares, more than 10,000 views. And again, really good example of kind of taking your unique experiences and perspectives and writing about that. This next one is from the dean at the Ross School of Business. This is actually his very first post, which he published this week. And this is a good example of a trend piece. I think it's up to more than 10,000 views now and probably double the comments and shares. But he says that he was deeply troubled by the trend this presidential election cycle that was demonizing business. So he wrote about this. This was, again, his very first post, and it did really well. Besides like the timely posts and kind of the breaking views, I also wanted to show a couple of other examples that have been written. You can use LinkedIn publishing to really address issues within higher education, or, you know, as I said before, what your school is doing or how they might be rethinking education. This one is from Bali Air, who is at Babson, which is a leading entrepreneurial school. And he co-wrote this post about what Babson and other schools should be doing when they're training students for the digital age. This post got 1,000 views and just 4 comments, but as he mentioned earlier, it's not always about the views, it's really about reaching that key audience, so he was able to speak to the people he needed to speak to with this particular post. He's also written about other things the school is doing in terms of training students for entrepreneurship. And finally, this last example, when it comes to LinkedIn, op-eds do great. This one's from Michael Crow. He's another influencer on the platform, but he's a president of ASU, and he wrote about expanding access to higher education. And in this piece, he's arguing that by educating larger and increasingly more diverse segments of the population, which is what he does at ASU, that we can really drive innovation and increase the nation's competitiveness. This got over 93,000 views, more than 300 comments, and a lot of shares as well. So these are just some examples of those different types of posts that do well. These are questions that I always send this to people when they ask, you know, well, what should I be writing on LinkedIn, or how should I think about it? And I think these are really important questions to ask when you're thinking about not only what to write, but if you want to write and really gain or reach the biggest audience you can, this is what you should ask. Why am I writing this now? What knowledge, insight, or expertise can I bring that no one else can? Do I have an opinion? What evidence can I use to support this viewpoint? And is there something everyone is talking about that I can incorporate? So these are just some of the questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about what to write and different ideas. In terms of best practices, the headline is one of the most important things on a post. This will really make or break the post, to be honest. I can't tell you how many times we come across a post that's really well written and pretty good, but the headline is terrible, so we can't promote it. So you want to make sure that it's clear and clickable, so using active words, making it conversational in tone. You want to avoid clickbait, anything that's sensational or misleading. I also tell people to try and avoid like listicle-like headlines, so that's like the 5 ways to do this, or the 3 things I learned at the Education Connect conference. Try and come up with a more clickable conversational headline. Also, attribution. I'm speaking to a room full of folks who work in academia, so I don't need to go into that. But hyperlinks are your friend. I've also seen people use footnotes, so whatever you feel more comfortable doing is great. Using a compelling image, again, very important. You want something that really illustrates the theme or the idea of the post. I would avoid like word clouds or really cheesy stock images. We see a lot of those. Try not to use them. There are some great like free photos stock sites like Flickr's Creative Commons, for example. Speaking of images, rich media, you can now embed tweets, videos, and any of that stuff in your LinkedIn post. It's a really great way to not only break up the post, but also kind of illustrate what you might be talking about in your post. So for example, if you're talking about a video, you'll want to embed it so that the person doesn't have to leave your post to try and go find it, because they might not come back. Sharing is very important. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that, but not only sharing it on LinkedIn, but also off is very important. And writing often, consistency is very important. LinkedIn functions just like any other social media network, so it's really all about consistency and using it. So you want to write often, whether that's once a month, once a week, whatever you decide, just make sure that it's consistent. And one thing I didn't include on here, but I often get asked this, is the word count. There's no specific word count in terms of posts, but our data finds that 800 to 1,200 words is kind of the sweet spot for engagement. But I always say, write what the content demands. So if your piece only needs to be said in 500 words, stick to 500 words. In terms of how to get started, it's pretty easy. The individual has to post from their LinkedIn account, but once they're on the home page, they would just click write an article or write a post, and then it will open up to this screen. This is actually our new publishing platform, a bit more streamlined and easier to use, but it's just a matter of adding the headline, photo, and the text, and just hitting publish. And once you publish, you're going to be prompted to share it. Strongly encourage you to do that. It will be shared on your feed. You can also not only share posts there, but you can share articles or photos, or you can share this event, as some of you, I'm sure, have done that. So you definitely want to, share this and really build the world of your followers. Sorry, just going here. And sharing via social media, very important. Again, not only sharing on LinkedIn, but if you're on Twitter, sharing it there, Facebook, Snapchat, wherever you are, just share it there. If the writer is on LinkedIn, you can connect the Twitter account via the privacy and settings, and that way, anytime someone shares that post via Twitter, that person's handle will be included in the tweet. So it's a really good way to keep track of how the conversation is going on Twitter. And in terms of possible promotion, members typically tweet at LinkedIn Pulse. That actually goes directly to editors, so we're able to see what members are publishing and decide whether or not we want to promote that more widely. And finally, just before I take questions, if you're writing about education specifically, there's a hashtag that I've been using that I check daily. It's hashtag #EdInsights. This is something that authors just add at the bottom of their posts at the bottom. So that's another way to kind of try and gain some attention and also promotion. Strongly encourage you to follow the education channel. I do like a weekly roundup of kind of the top posts that have been featured in the education channel for that week. So that's a really good place to kind of see what other people are writing. And then I also include post ideas there. I often reach out to members on LinkedIn to say, hey, do you want to write about this? This is going on. I think you have, a real special expertise that would enable you to talk about this. And finally, my contact information is here. So if you're not able to speak to me, happy to talk to you guys afterwards. But if you're not able to speak to me, please feel free to email me. And use a hashtag in the subject. I'm just kidding. And yeah, so that's really all that I have. But as I said, I would love to take your questions, whether it's about publishing, how to be an influencer, any and everything. Yes.
I think maybe all of the examples you used are from business schools.
Yes.
And I was curious is it that business schools are publishing more, or is that an editorial choice in terms of the timeliness and relevance of the content? Can you talk about that a little
Good question. It's not just business schools, but business schools are the ones that I've been working with lately. But I definitely want to expand that and work with a lot more universities and a lot more types of schools. So please come and talk to me because I want to work with you. Yes.
Are some of the new publishing platforms like Rich Media and embedding tweets, is that available from university accounts, or is that your own?
You mean embedding tweets via?
Like, I work at the new school, and that's where I'm sharing all of our information from.
Like on the LinkedIn page? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. So right now, companies or schools, you can't publish posts. So it has to come from the individual. So if you have a faculty member or even a student whose maybe university blog you might be sharing, you'd want them to like cross-post that onto LinkedIn. And would strongly encourage you all to do that. Like, you don't have to always, of course we love original content, but if you're already writing content for other sources, and even like our influencers as well as members, we have some people who write, say for the New York Times, a lot of that stuff they do cross-post on LinkedIn to really get a different audience and also sometimes a much larger audience. Yes.
on the revamped Pulse blog.
Yes.
So would you just recommend like putting the hashtags in the actual post?
Yeah, so the hashtags would never go in the tags, but yeah, they don't exist anymore. So just put it in the body of the post at the bottom. For students, for example, we're using hashtag student voices, so a lot of students will add that to their posts, and I also check that. But yeah, tags aren't there anymore. Yes. Oh, sorry, you have the mic. I'll come back to you.
Oh, sorry. So I get this is a two-part question, but
Yes.
On back to the question about posting from a page, is that something that's in the product roadmap at all for brands to be able to publish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the first part, and then
Yeah, and
second
then the
part.
second part I was going to say is if that's not or before then, is there any advice you have for brands or schools for using your brand advocates and promoting that through your own page or best practices in that?
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm not sure. That would be nice, but yeah, I'm not sure if that's in the roadmap. I would say the best way to do it is to reach out to those individuals who you know are publishing or going to be representing your brand in some way, and make sure that they're publishing, and then share that content on the company page as well as your other social media profiles. Yes.
Just a quick technical question about the
Yes.
tagging and the hashtags.
Yep.
So are the hashtags live on the mobile
They're
version, but not on the desktop?
Yeah, so
version?
hashtags are on desktop and mobile for the short form sharing. This is the long form shares, and they're not active yet on mobile or on desktop. So yeah, you can't like actively click on them and then see all the content. You would actually have to, if you wanted to see the content that's being shared via Ed Insights, you would just search LinkedIn for posts, and then you can see that content.
Thank you.
It's a very workaround. They're working
Yeah.
on it. I do know they're working on that. Yes.
Hi, Maya. I was a minute late, so I hope you didn't address this. So I
No
have
worries.
faculty who are hesitant to publish because they want to be an influencer right away. What is the criteria for becoming a influencer? Is it a certain number of followers or shares or likes?
Yeah.
Or
Good question. Not a certain amount of followers. It's really about you need to start publishing. I mentioned Jeffrey Garrett earlier. He was not an influencer at first, but he was publishing consistently. He was writing on timely topics and stuff that we were able to really promote. And he really built his own audience without the help of us. So that's sort of what we want to see before we give someone an influencer tag. I will say that generally we reserve it for CEOs, leaders, but there are some university leaders who are influencers. But at this point, it's really you have to get started with publishing. And one of the reasons I'm here is if they are interested in doing that, and if they can, write without that influencer tag, happy to work with them directly and sort of steer them in the way so that they can be promoted more widely and write the types of stuff that we would promote. So I do work a lot with not only just influencers, but as I said earlier, university leaders, students. So I do that. So they're kind of getting that influencer treatment without the tag. Yep.
so when you say you promote them, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah, good question. So we promote it. So we have a number of channels, for example. So I mentioned our tech channel. It has 17.5 million followers. So we'll, depending on what the content is about, if it's about technology or they're talking about tech in some way, we might promote it in that channel. And so the followers of that channel will see that. In addition to that, it might show up in a member's feed. And then we also do push alerts. So, and these push alerts aren't just reserved for influencer content. We really try and push the best content of the day. So if that gets pushed out, it will be pushed to millions of people. Yeah. More questions? Yes.
So a lot of academics sometimes have trouble translating their work for a
Yes.
lay audience, and as communications professionals, often we have to help them with that translation.
I love you guys.
A lot of what you showed there, it's very personal, personal opinions on what's going on in the world. What advice would you have for us who are producing, publicly facing content about really esoteric subjects?
Yeah, I think it depends. I don't think I generally I would say like conversational tone, breaking it up maybe in subsections, making it shorter would generally be my feedback. But I think it's fine to touch on those tougher topics or topics that might not appeal to hundreds of thousands of people. And as I said earlier, like it's really all about at the end of the day reaching the key audience. And if the professor is in, I always use supply chain management because I don't know anyone who works in that. But I always use as an example, if they're like an expert in that, then they should stick to writing about that. And they might not have that channel. I know does not have as many followers as tech, but they can reach that audience. So I think generally just making sure it's conversational in the tone. And I always suggest like breaking it up in like subheads, including rich media to kind of break it up, or any kind of charts, anything like that would be my advice.